In case you're wondering what I'm doing, today's video is all about a basic tutorial on how to temper a cast iron tawa. Let's begin this basic tutorial. It's important to understand that the best and the finest of ingredients will also lose their nutrient value if they're not cooked in a proper utensil. Now, I'm categorically speaking today about cast iron because cast iron is made using a process called smelting. It's basically a combination of iron ore and scrap iron. Now, it's also important to understand that due to extreme heat conditions or in extreme heat conditions also, this would not bend because this is hard enough. Now, that's the difference between an iron pan and a cast iron pan. This is literally cast using a process called smelting, as said before. Now, when you get this from the market, you would get this in various shapes. You could get it straight, you could get it slightly bent, you could get it with two holding handles like this, you could get it with a little bit of a jutting out handle with a wooden handle attached to it, and various other things. Now, you could make a chapati, a paratha and things like that in a pan which is slightly bent or slightly curved. For dosas, especially South Indian specialties, you would need a pan which is straight and flat, very importantly, because you do not want that curve and then bend. When you get a cast iron pan from the market, the first thing is to check the label. It has to very clearly read cast iron tawa or cast iron pan and not just an iron pan. Very important. The corrosion or the rusting of the pan really depends on these things. What you need to do is, the first thing that you do is you get this pan out of the box or the packaging material and wash this running water at room temperature with a little bit of soap solution using either a metal scraper or just any scrubber for that matter. You wipe this dry and clean and place this on the workbench. Now, there are various ways in which you can temper a tawa. Now, tempering is very important because that way it almost becomes very similar to your non-stick pan. Now, the difference between non-stick and your pan is cast iron pan in this case is basically it has a coating or a filament which makes it grease proof. Now, it's very important, as a matter of fact, to keep using this tawa. Now, when I say keep using this tawa, it does not mean that you need to keep using it only to make dosas. You can broil your spices in this. You can do your chapatis and parathas and things like that in this. You can also roast things like onions or coconut in this tawa, especially so that this tawa is constantly kept to use. And that is very important because the more you keep using this pan, the better it will keep becoming. Now, that's very important. First things first, you can temper this in various ways. There are at least 10 to 12 different ways in how you can temper this tawa. Firstly, it's important to clean this and dry this. Secondly, it's important to keep this at least for a few hours in starch water. Now, what do you understand by starch water? In our kitchens, there are 2-3 different kinds of starches. You can use rice starch or you can use potato starch. Now, when I say rice and potato starch, you don't have to go out in the market and buy these starches. When you wash rice, the starch water that you actually drain out, the white colored water, you can keep that aside and you can keep the tawa soaked in that. Secondly, what you could also do is you can take potatoes, take one potato, peel it, slice it or chop it into pieces, and then you soak that in like a cauldron of water. You remove the pieces of potato and you soak this tawa in that water. So these two starches, that's the first step of tempering. The next step of tempering is you take a little bit of turmeric powder like so. The next thing is salt, a few spoons of oil. You mix this together with the tip of your fingers and you move this around in the entire pan. Once you spread this sand-like mixture on the surface of the pan, you keep this pan aside for an hour. Now, I'm showing you different ways of tempering. So, keeping it in starch water is one. Rubbing a mixture of salt, turmeric and oil is step number 2 or option number 2. You don't have to do all these things together, right? The only thing that you have to do as a compulsion is something that we'll come to. But for now, this is step number 2 or this is option number 2. Just keep this aside for at least an hour and then we wash this again in running water with a little bit of solution and a metal scrubber. Let's wait for that. I've washed this pan nice and clean and also wiped it dry. At this stage also it's kind of ready to use, it's kind of tempered and done. But what I'm doing is I'm taking it to the next level. I'm showing you step number 3, and that is toasting salt. Now it could be table salt, you could use sea salt, choice is absolutely yours. You take a little more and that's absolutely not a problem. And then you spread this across the surface of the pan like so and allow this salt to literally dry out, or even if it changes color, that's absolutely fine. Now this kind of dry salt is also used while making pickles. Remember, you need to toast your pickle so that all the moisture dries out. So this of course does not go to waste. If you're somebody who loves making pickles at home, use this salt. While I'm toasting the salt, let me quickly take you on to step number 4 or to option number 4, and that is taking 2 teaspoons of mustard and 2 teaspoons of urad dal or black gram, and you need to just toast that till it burns out and you throw it, as simple as that. So that's option number 4. Let me first complete this. This salt can be kept aside because, like I said, it's just dehydrated salt, it's roasted salt, it's not gone bad. Just keep this aside and keep using it for your recipes. That brings us to the 4th option, and now let's move on to option number 5, and that is first cleaning this and adding a star ingredient. Let's do that. Option number 5, you turn the flame on, keep your cast iron pan on that, and you add in scrapings of onion. Now this is something that needs no introduction. We all have this in our home kitchens. We generally just discard this and throw it in the garbage. You add in a little bit of oil, salt, very important, and then you literally roast this on this entire cast iron tawa. You keep moving it from one end to another end, and that's about it. Once all of this gets scorched on high flame, you're going to take a duster or a kitchen towel. You just fold it like so, and then off goes the flame. Very importantly, you with very gentle hands collect all of this and discard it. Simple. Once the onions are discarded, you take a cloth and you clean the entire pan like so. Ensure while cleaning, you rub the salt into the grooves of the pan like so, and then with the help of a tissue paper, you clean the pan completely. Well, this is now done and ready. I'm showing you option number 6, and that is you take a little bit of oil again. And in this case, like I told you before, you can pan fry onions, coconut and things like that, so that the oil from that also gets released and kind of helps in additionally helping you to temper the pan. Let's take slices of onions, and these onions are going to be used for your gravies or for your curries. So I'm just adding a little bit of salt to taste so that the onions start caramelizing faster. To this you can also add in coconut, fresh or dried, and just ensure that this gets beautifully charred, and once that's done, your pan is tempered and ready. This way I've shown you 6 different ways in which you can temper a pan. Eventually, once your pan is tempered, you clean it nicely with a tissue paper, and then when your heat is on, you sprinkle in a little bit of water and oil, exactly the way you see dosa walas doing across the globe. That's exactly how the pan then gets ready to use. I'll reach there. Let me quickly finish this. Well, in the hotels, what we generally do is we take some blanched spinach, puree it exactly the way we would do for palak paneer or aloo palak or lasuni palak, and then you just add in a few drops of palak on your tawa and you let it burn. You scrape it nicely, wash it, and your tawa is tempered and ready. Alternately, you can also use mayonnaise. Now, mayonnaise also works as a wonderful scraping agent. You know, you just burn off the entire mayonnaise, then you scrape it, then you clean it, pat it dry, then you sprinkle water and oil, and that's just about perfect. So you have these 7-8 different ways in which you can temper the pan. Once that's done, I'm going to quickly show you the next step. Once this is done, once the onions are caramelized like so, we transfer that in a bowl, and your tawa is now officially tempered and ready. You wipe the tawa nicely, and this is now ready and tempered. Now, what do we do with this brown onion? It's very simple. Allow this to cool down completely, then transfer it in a zip pouch or in a little bit of a freezer box, and we can run this into a fine and smooth paste. Let's make a gravy out of this a little later. I'll keep this aside for now. I'm going to freeze it. If you're doing this, freeze it and keep it ready. I'm going to show you a recipe very soon. Now, the next step, after all the processes, all the alternate processes of tempering are done, we take in oil like so, because what's important in iron or cast iron is that there is uncontrolled heat. You know, once this heats up, it takes time to kind of come down in terms of its temperature. What is important is to control the heat. Otherwise, that uncontrolled heat will eventually result in burning your dosas or burning anything that you're making on this. So you add in a little bit of oil like so, and along with this, you also take a little bit of water. Let this combination of water and oil glaze this pan with the help of a tissue. You just clean it like so. And now this tawa is ready to use. Let's put it to use. After tempering the tawa, what I like to do is take an onion, cut the cap off or cut the root off and poke a fork like so, and just keep it ready, because that way you can dip this in oil and that in a way becomes your homemade brush. You move this around the entire pan to ensure that it's reglazed with all the goodness of oil. And then to just kind of counterbalance, because I can see a little bit of the smoke coming in, just to balance it, you sprinkle some water. Now this way your tawa is beautifully tempered and ready for your batter to go in. Now this is your regular dosa batter. I've shown you recipes in the past. You can just follow that and you drop in like so. Now this is a sign that a tawa is beautifully tempered. There you go. With this, your most amazing and crisp dosa is done and ready. In this case, what is important is the tempering that needs to be noted. I've shown you several ways in which you can temper a pan. Use one of those, but whatever you do, onions work the best. Put this to use and let me know in the comment section how you like this. Make these crisp dosas for family and friends, and let me know if you need some more quick recipes like so. Bye for now.